I'd like to welcome you to the IMF Summer School preview for the Virtual Training to Advance Revenue Administration, or VITARA. VITARA is a joint project among the IMF and its partners, namely the Inter-American Center of Tax Administrations, the Inter-European Organization of Tax Administrations, and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. VITARA is designed to help developing countries succeed in domestic revenue mobilization and meet their sustainable development goals. VITARA provides a comprehensive program for senior managers, executives, and tax officials in developing countries by addressing issues including strategic and reform management, organizational arrangements, human resource management, and governance. To deliver these objectives, tax administrations need to build their capability in key areas, ranging from institutional arrangements to core tax administration functions. The first VITARA module on strategic management will introduce you to the application of strategic management in a tax administration and will explain how organizations can reach and support their long-term objectives without sacrificing short-term operational results. Strategic management helps tax administrations build a strong foundation for their future. It assists them in setting clear objectives and a roadmap to reach those objectives. A strategically managed tax administration is more proactive and innovative. It identifies and addresses future risks more effectively and operates more efficiently. To learn more, enroll in the first VITARA module on strategic management for free. I hope to see you all soon.
Let's talk about strategic management in the context of a tax administration. Tax administrations exist to implement tax laws and collect revenues to finance the state, and as such, their strategy is part of a broader government strategy. To collect the maximum revenues under the law, differentiated approaches are used to promote voluntary compliance with service and education for those who want to comply, and targeted enforcement actions to enforce compliance for those who have shown they don't want to comply. At the same time, the administration has a role in ensuring that tax laws are applied in a fair and transparent manner, which also supports voluntary compliance as it increases taxpayers' and other stakeholders' trust in the tax administration. To support their national plan, governments typically establish long-term objectives, with each government department developing plans to support the broader government plan. A government plan usually has explicit social and economic goals. Revenue is critical to fund those government entities' social and economic goals. While governments rely on several sources of funding, the majority of funding is usually collected through the country's tax system. Some countries use the Medium-Term Revenue Strategy, or MTRS, approach to formulate a complete government tax system reform to mobilize additional tax revenues. We will learn more about the MTRS in the next section. Tax administration strategies set forth medium-term goals and objectives to carry out the administration's mandate. These are aligned to the overall government strategy and timelines. The strategies are hierarchical. The government plan drives the strategy for the Ministry of Finance or its equivalent in countries which do not have such a ministry, which in turn drives the tax administration strategy. A key point is that the tax administration strategy is part of a broader government strategy. To understand what the strategic priorities for a tax administration might look like, let's go back to the mandate of a tax administration: to implement and administer tax laws and collect revenue for the state. This is accomplished in a way that is the least burdensome for taxpayers involved in economic and commercial activity. In order to protect the tax base, strategic management aims at promoting and managing compliance and reducing the compliance gap given the resources allocated to the tax administration. This figure shows a hierarchical nature of the strategic plans from the government level to the tax administration for countries with relatively more developed administrations. Notice that below the tax administration's strategic plan are the tactical and operational plans that are needed to make the strategic plan a reality.
Many administrations that lack a strategic management process often find themselves constantly reacting to crisis situations that arise in administering the nation's tax regime. As you can imagine, regularly being in a reactionary mode to a crisis is exhausting and rarely produces the best results. Management and staff are forced to stop what they are doing to deal with the crisis, which put them behind in their daily tasks. For administrations that have articulated a clear vision and strategy, a crisis can present an opportunity to accelerate developments that were already in the planning stages. For example, the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 allowed some administrations to shift to online delivery for taxpayer interactions. Some countries have been able to enhance their online service, offering to accommodate electronic filing and payment for all tax types, minimizing the need for face-to-face interaction at the service counters of the tax administration. Beyond limited in-person interaction, moving taxpayers to the digital platform also presented efficiency gains for these administrations, as staff no longer needs to process transactions manually. One of the purposes of strategic management is to think ahead, for example, about how the business environment could change in the future and to forecast the potential impacts on the tax administration. This strategic thinking will allow management to plan deliberately and to act proactively. An example of strategic management is looking at the impacts of digitalization within the tax administration and subsequently on the workforce. As more taxpayers file and pay electronically, less staff are needed to process tax returns. Timely planning will help the administration take measures to either retrain the excess staff or use attrition, such as retirements or departures, to reduce the actual number of staff needed to undertake that function. Digitalization also requires forward planning to ensure the IT systems and telecommunication infrastructure can accommodate increasing volumes of electronic processes and transactions. Planning ensures the organization is prepared to address such challenges and seize the opportunities they bring.
Engaging stakeholders throughout the strategic planning process is considered one of the critical factors for effective strategic management. Stakeholders are people or organizations with an interest in something, in this case, the tax administration. Engaging stakeholders provides a clear sign that the organization is interested in the effects that its actions might have on the community. This transparent, consultative process fosters closer relationships with these stakeholder organizations and individuals, and provides valuable information for evaluating the tax administration. It is important to identify the stakeholders in the early stages of strategic planning, group them according to their levels of interest and influence in the corporate strategy, and determine how best to involve them and communicate with each of these groups throughout the strategic planning process. This figure describes the process of stakeholder analysis and engagement. When identifying stakeholders, consider who your strategy is affecting, what their interests are, and who your obvious key stakeholders are. Next, invite their feedback. Who are the individuals that best represent your stakeholder groups? You also need to know where they are and how to contact them. Design a system to obtain their feedback. For example, you can create an outreach calendar and design multiple channels of communication. Once you have received their feedback, you need to incorporate it into the process. Finally, don't forget to report back to your stakeholders. Include their feedback as part of the strategy's communication plan and show the results of their participation. When staff have dual functions, in this case, daily operational tasks, as well as tasks related to planning for the future, the daily operational responsibilities always tend to prevail, and the reform-related work suffers. Best results have been achieved when the administration sets up and fully staffs a separate organizational unit, typically called the Office of Strategic Management, or OSM, whose responsibility is to manage the development and implementation of the strategic plan. To recognize the important role that this unit would play, the OSM should report directly to the Director of the Administration, but work horizontally with colleagues to help facilitate and monitor implementation of their individual operational plans. Keep in mind that depending on the size of the organization and a country's particular situation, there could be numerous organizational units below each of the boxes that report to the Director of the Administration. This diagram shows the reporting relationship from an organizational perspective and also shows that the OSM has a senior role in the administration. The appropriate level of staffing for the OSM will depend on the administration's size and expertise in undertaking strategic management. Typically, a discussion regarding the needed unit's functions and activities will help the administration decide what the OSM's staffing level should be. Now that you have a good understanding of strategic management, here is a list of key considerations and lessons learned that will help you identify and avoid the most common mistakes in implementing strategic plans. These key considerations include understanding resource adequacy, keeping a positive mindset, confusing a plan with management, ignoring culture, overcomplicating strategy, paying attention to people, having too many measures, fearing failure, honest assessments, underestimating the importance of communication, failing to share, and ensuring long-term engagement for success. Understanding resource adequacy. Understanding resource limitations should determine the scope and pace of strategic shifts in direction. Strategic plans may require changes in legislation, regulations, procedures, and staff capabilities. Let's talk about keeping a positive mindset. Good rules of thumb here are recognize small wins, reward the people involved, and reinforce positive results. Confusing a plan with management. The strategic plan is not the end goal. Having a strategic plan is only the beginning. Implementation brings the strategy to fruition. Recognize that implementation can be challenging, but the benefits are worthwhile. Eventually, the strategic management process will become embedded into the daily tax administration processes. Ignoring culture. The culture of the organization must favor engagement and transparency. Otherwise, implementing the strategy will be an uphill struggle. Staff should feel comfortable telling you when things aren't working. Receiving timely feedback is crucial. Make sure that your plan has been thought through and discussed with your staff, and take the time to address any perceived cultural deficits before any major strategic change. Overcomplicating strategy. For administrations developing their first strategic plan, don't strive for perfection. Choose 2 or 3 strategic objectives and use the experience to learn. This will serve you well for the second strategic plan, which can build on your successes. The key is to start. Paying attention to people. Never underestimate the importance of staff in strategic change. As a leader, you are the catalyst of change, but it's the people of the organization that carry your vision and turn it into reality. Having too many measures. Choose 1 or 2 measures per objective that are actionable and realistic. Too many measures clutter your goals. Think about measures that will indicate whether the objective has been reached. The saying goes, what gets measured gets done. If you measure the wrong thing, you will succeed in your measure, but may not achieve the outcome you were looking for. Fearing failure. It is unlikely you will get everything right in your strategy. As long as you have good measures to identify that you are falling short of the objective, then you can adjust plans to adapt accordingly. The failure is not to adjust and monitor the strategy when necessary. Adapt and move on. Having honest assessments. Leaders must solicit honest assessments, even if they are not positive. This isn't a reason to feel discouraged. Rather, it is how you determine what change is needed. Plus, it is really important to create an environment in which employees see measurement as a vehicle for improvement and not for blame. Underestimating the importance of communication. As the leader of the administration, you should communicate personally with staff and often. Cascading messaging by all levels of management will build consensus and commitment to the change program. Failing to share. Leaders that keep discussions of strategy to themselves miss the opportunity for cross-functional dialogue that brings forth voices and therefore ideas, insights, and feedback that may otherwise not be heard. Successful organizations welcome unusual opinions and inputs instead of disregarding them. You may even consider mixing teammates from different departments and functions. The contrasting perspectives will lead to richer, more informed dialogue. Ensuring long-term engagement for success. Structural reforms require that tax administrations in developing countries and their partners, that is, development partners and local government, engage for the long term. Building stronger tax systems with effective tax administrations should be understood as an investment that will take several years. The key is to pursue a needs-based reform program that is tailored to each country and developed from within the administration rather than an external process.